Hi guys, my name is Megan and welcome back to my corner of the internet and YouTubes, and I'm just going to jump right into all of the books that I read in the month of May. Did I stick to my TBR? Did I not? Long story short, I didn't really stick to my TBR. There are a couple books that I just didn't get to for time issues. I picked up something else instead, and I have one book that I'm going to start the video off with. It's not a DNF yet. It's just something that I'm just not in the mood for, and I was kind of excited about this book. Was it a cover by? Maybe. Probably. It was a cover by, but that is Five Broken Blades by Mike Corland. I'm not in the mood. You're following 5 separate characters. I only made it to chapter 10 on this book. So I got all of the character introductions and I got all of their tragic backstories. We have an assassin, we have an ostracized royal, we have a poisoner, we have a strong man. We have these 5 characters with their 5 backstories, and they're all setting out to kill the god king of Yusan. And I think if you liked Rebel Moon, the movies on Netflix, that you'll enjoy reading this. If you want that in kind of like with anime vibes. But I had just watched Rebel Moon at the beginning of this month, and I got the same sort of formula from reading the first 10 chapters of this book. I don't think it's going to be the same, but I think you really have to be in the mood for this, and I'm not. It kind of felt like the beginning of a story I've read before, kind of formulaic, and I did want this to be a little darker than it was, and one of the characters in particular just seems kind of quirky, which is fine, but it's not what I'm in the mood for. I think this is going to be like a fun fantasy with dark undertones, but it's not something I'm in the mood. It read a little young for me, so I put it down. I haven't DNF'd it. I wasn't in the mood for it this month, so it's going down. The other book that was on my TBR that I did not read was Soul Cage by L.R. Schultz, and that was just a time issue. I haven't even downloaded it onto my Kindle yet, so I'm probably going to scooch that on over to read next month, because I still am really interested in reading that, because it does seem really interesting. But that one was the other book on my TBR that I didn't get to. The other book that I did not get to is The Deer and the Dragon by Piper CJ. I realized who Piper CJ was, and I followed Piper CJ for a while on TikTok. I think she's fun. So I am still very interested in reading this book. I've already started reading it. I'm about 60 pages into it. I'm enjoying it so far. The first line alone, I was just like, I'm sold. You have me. I'm interested. I stared down the barrel of the lesser of 2 evils, the flesh and blood disappointment of a human man, or a life trapped in my imagination with a fictional lover. So I'm sold. I can't wait to read this. I am reading it. I can't wait to finish it. I'm enjoying it so far. It's not a young adult. I thought it was going to be a young adult. It's not a young adult, and I do appreciate kind of the messages that Piper CJ puts into her content, and I'm expecting the same sort of messages in the book. I haven't read her other books, but I'm enjoying this one so far, so we'll see how it goes. I haven't finished it, so this is going to be part of my June TBR and my June reads. I'm not counting it for May because obviously I didn't read it. But those are the 3 books from my I need to read this part of my TBR that I just didn't get to and didn't finish for May. If you're new here, every month I try to read either a nonfiction or a classic or modern classic book. This month it was another nonfiction. It was Sociopath by Patrick Gagney. I read this on my Kindle. It explores like the differences between psychopathy and sociopathy, and it's a memoir of her becoming a psychologist now and growing up as a sociopath and not having the proper diagnoses for it, and just trying to kind of find what spectrum of psychology sociopaths fit into so they can get the right sort of treatment. I just thought it was an interesting read. For a long time I thought I had psychopathy. I do not. I have other issues. I'm not a sociopath either, but I did find that a really interesting read. And if you want to read an interesting memoir on psychology, I think that's a great one. Now back into the world of science fiction and fantasy, which is where I stay. I did a reread of Elantris by Brandy Sandy after I got my copy in, my new copy in, after I sold mine. But I reread this after I got it in. I was excited to be back in this world. I think that this is my favorite male lead in Brandon Sanderson. And this is always going to be my favorite standalone fantasy. I haven't really found anything to compete with this as far as standalone fantasy goes. I know that Brandon Sanderson thinks this is one of his lesser novels. But I think, especially if you're just getting into fantasy and you don't want to get into epic fantasy and read 40 books, I think Elantris is a really great place to start. I don't know what to rate this, honestly, because I'm so biased because this is such a nostalgia read for me. But I say this is going to be a 4.5 or a 5-star book. I think everybody can enjoy this. It's a very easy read. The character development is amazing and perfect. And I love everything about this story. If you want me to do a whole video on Elantris, I will. If you want me to do a whole video on the Cosmere, I will. But this is definitely one of my favorite Brandy Sandys, and I'm glad I picked it up again last month. And the good reading year goes on because this is a new favorite. This is a novella by Oliver K. Langmaid. This is Calypso. I'm not going to rate this 5-star. I explained why in my what makes a book 5-star for me video. But this is definitely going to be one of my favorite books this year. I think this is going to be one of my favorite books, period. We have our main character, Rochelle, and she is an engineer on this spaceship that's going to go and colonize a faraway planet. There's another main character who is in charge of leading this expedition, and it has a lot to say about the human condition and is there really such a thing as a clean slate. This is a very, very deep novel. This is very thought-provoking. It's only, I think it's under 150 pages. I mean 250 pages. It's under 250 pages, but it looks like this. So, but this is not a quick read. It took me 5 days to read this, but it was intense. I want to recommend this to everybody, but the prose is a little, I don't want to say flowery, but the prose is very deep. It won't be for everybody. There's a little bit of philosophy in here, and it is something that you're just going to sit down after reading and go, There are a couple things that keep this from being a 5-star for me. There's kind of an info dumping with the Herald in the middle of the book. And it is just not, it doesn't have the readability that I think everybody can pick this up and enjoy it. And that's really the only thing that keeps it from being a 5-star for me, is because I can't recommend it to everybody. But for me, this is a new favorite book. Definitely glad I picked this up. I was looking forward to this book, and now that I have it, I want to read more by Langmaid. So we'll see how this goes. But definitely, if you like science fiction, specifically science fiction, not sci-fi horror, not dystopian science fiction, but specifically sci-fi, I think you'll really enjoy this one. I also knocked out not one but 2 of my book of the month books. I picked up Butcher and Blackbeard when it was not what I was expecting. But I think Leather and Lark is coming out this month, and I already added that to my book of the month box. Disclaimer, I am obviously in no way affiliated with the book of the month. I'm just a normal subscriber to it, but I enjoyed this for what it was. It was a little spice in between everything else. I'm not going to rate this because I'm not this sort of reader, but if you do want a little bit of spice, a little bit of silly kink in between your more heavy reads. It's about 2 serial killers that kill other serial killers. They meet up unintentionally, and they make a game out of every year they'll go after a different serial killer, see who gets it first, and of course they fall in love and all of the problems that come with that. It was just a silly little love story, as silly as you can get, with things like cannibalism and murder and blood and guts. But for what it was fun. This was a fun little read. I had a good time reading it. The spice was on point. Whatever you were looking for in Iron Flame, the spice is here. So I enjoyed it for what it was. And then we have Wayward by Amelia Hart. This was a 5-star read for me. I know it's not science fiction or fantasy. This is if like Practical Magic and Sleeping with the Enemy had a baby and made a historical fiction generational Lifetime movie. I know I'm not winning anybody over with this, but I think it's one of the Book of the Year finalists from Book of the Month for a reason. This super readable. You could pick this up and finish it in a day if you have the time. The language isn't too flowery. You're not going to get lost in it. It's a quick read. There is a lot of, I would say there's a lot of trigger warnings in here, but if you're okay with the trigger warnings and you're into kind of generational witchy books, then this is a good one. It has a lot to do with domestic violence and SA and child loss. but you're following three perspectives. You're following current day, a woman who's escaping her abusive boyfriend, a woman in the past, a younger witch, I believe it's her grand aunt, and then a couple generations back, another ancestor, and you're just following them escaping the generational curse of abusive men one way or another. And I really did enjoy reading this. Once again, a lot of trigger warnings, but if you can stomach the trigger warnings, this is a good. I also finally finished Under the Northern Sky by Leo Carew. I finished The Cuckoo, the third installment. The ending devastated me. I wish it didn't have to end this way, but I know that this was the best ending, and this is the ending we needed. This covered everything I wanted it to cover. I cried in this book. I was shocked in a part of this book. There were some things that were happening that I knew were gonna come, but still, this was a ride. This was the perfect conclusion to the series. I really want to recommend this series to everybody. If you are a fan of Game of Thrones, but you're okay with just political fantasy, and you're okay with reading fantasy without the dragons and without the spice, then this is such a good series. I enjoyed this so much. I don't want to talk too much about this book because I really will be giving things away from the rest of the series. But this is a world, think England in the Dark Ages, but instead of just humans being on their own, there are also Neanderthals and another species of humans, and we are at war with one another. There is treachery, there is backstabbing, there's political manipulation in here. There is just so many things just all coming together at once. My heart broke reading this, and I can't, yeah, my nails are falling off, and I couldn't get enough of this series. Definitely one of my favorite series now. I can't give it a 5-star only because I know I can't recommend it to everybody, but it's like a 4.9, and I just know I can't say, here, you love fantasy, read this, because it is so heavy political fantasy and it is so heavy military fantasy. But if that's the sort of fantasy you want, this series was so good, and not enough people are reading this, but I definitely recommend it. I also finally did read Daughter of Red Winter. This is a Scottish-based fantasy series. We are following 17-year-old Rain, and she can see the dead. In the beginning of the story, she tries to save a woman's life, but all of that does is it brings more death onto her and the people she's living with. She is brought into a whole other community, but Rain can see the dead, and that is not something you want to do, because people that can see the dead are immediately put to death, because the people of this world, people of this dimension, think that they're going to bring the dead back onto Earth. So I don't really understand the magic in this world. I think it'll be more explained in the next series. I did really enjoy reading it. It was not a fast read. It is not YA. We're following a 17-year-old young woman, but this is not a YA. It explores her sexuality. It explores like her always being under somebody's thumb and finding her place. So it is in that sense a coming of age story, but that's not what the book is about. It is also about finding out who you can trust, and a lot of disappointment. There's not a lot of spice in this book. There's like someone sparking a match, but it's not spice, so I did enjoy that. I don't want to read a lot of spice in my fantasy all the time. I'll jump to a romantasy for that. I did enjoy that. I'm hoping I'll understand the world a little bit better in Trader of Red Winter, but really did enjoy it. Not ready to make a rating yet. I do need to think about it a little more. But I am really looking forward to the next book in the series, and hopefully I can get to Witch Queen of Red Winter before the end of next month. And the last book that I read in the month of May is book 1 in the Sun Eater series by Christopher Rucchio, and that is Empire of Silence. And am I going to finish this series? Yes. Is this a good book? Yes. Is it for everybody? Absolutely not. I did not plan on reading this, at least not this month. It is something I wanted to get to, but everybody was saying so many great things about it that I did decide to jump on the hype train and jump into another large series that I'm going to have to invest a lot of time into. And I have never hated a main character more in my life. I hate Hadrian Marlowe. We're reading his journals or his memoirs, at least in the first book. I don't know if that's going to carry forward, but he's in line to be the emperor. He doesn't know if he's going to be the emperor or the Lord or his brother. He doesn't want to be the Lord. He just doesn't want his brother to be the Lord. When he finds out that he is in fact not going to be the Lord and take his father's position, his father wants to send him off to become an inquisitor type person for a church sort of place. I hated this main character. I have never hated a main character more in my life. We're thrown some things from Stoicism. We're thrown some things from Siddhartha. We have this like, I even got some like litany of fear from Dune in some of the little parts and tidbits of this story. But as far as Hadrian Marlowe himself goes, I hated him. I don't know if we're supposed to like him. I don't know how he's going to become this person that everybody sees as the Sun Eater, the destroyer of worlds, this like genocidal maniac killer person. I just know that he is a brat and I hate him. And if you're going to quote Stoics to me, then you better act like a Stoic and not like a baby. Because he could have gotten these people that he loves more than anything murdered, and he just, not just because he didn't want to follow one path that he was directed to. I could do a whole video just about how much I hate this main character, but I am going to say it is a very well developed world. The writing isn't going to be for everybody. It is a very wordy book. We talk about sharpening pencils. Even the way he sharpened pencils made me think he was a douche. But that's just how invested you're going to get with everything. He is essentially abandoned on, or he's lost on this planet. He has to start his life from scratch. He has to hide who he is, or else he'll have to go back to his father and not be the Lord. But there's a bunch going on. I want to do a whole video about book 1. I will say this is a 3.5 stars because definitely not for everybody. I do really hate this character. But I did enjoy reading it enough to continue on with the series. It's not going to be a 4-star for me because I'm still just so mad at this character. And I don't know if we're supposed to hate him. I think I'm supposed to have some sort of respect for him, but he's a douche. Okay? He's such a child and such a douche. We have like gladiator-esque battles, and I think that's the only time in the story that I liked him. But that is not a discussion for today. I'm getting anxious just talking about how much I despised this main character, but I am going to do a whole video about that. Anyway, that is everything that I read in the month of May. I think that's a total of 8 books, and that seems to be where I'm at. 8 or 9 books is where I seem to be every month. Anyway, thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time when I go on a rant about Sun Eater Book 1. Bye. Thanks for hanging out.